Hi, my name is Hannah Groover, and I conducted research on the effect of personality traits on coping styles during COVID-19. The COVID-19 strain of the coronavirus first emerged in Wuhan, China in December of 2019. Around the world, it has spread, creating a pandemic that has sickened and killed hundreds of thousands of people. Mandates have been applied in all places, creating life changes, including masking in public, social distancing around everyone from strangers to loved ones, and regular self-quarantining and isolation per government orders or symptom displays. Because of these protocols creating a new normal, people everywhere have experienced extended periods of isolation and halted social activities that had previously increased life satisfaction. According to Panchal and colleagues, 45% of adults in North America reported that stress and worry related to COVID-19 has negatively impacted their mental health. The increased loneliness, as well as heightened levels of stress, fear, and grief, has led to rises in depression and anxiety. As Bulger identified, coping effectively and preferred coping methods are closely related with personality. Personality is defined as cognitive patterns of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that are consistently characteristic of individuals across time and situations. For this study, the Big Five model of personality was used. This model measures 5 traits and categorizes individuals based on their levels of openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Traits of personality, such as the traits of the Big Five model, serve as influencers for individuals of how they experience various stressors. These traits work to constrain or facilitate various coping strategies, and chosen coping strategies can affect the extent of severity an individual feels due to the stressor. Chang and Chung found that coping strategies served as a predictor for the long-term effects of a pandemic following the SARS outbreak of 2003. This information suggests that the lasting impact of extended periods of isolation, loneliness, and loss is somewhat reliant on coping during a pandemic. The current research sought to identify whether people with different dominant personality traits, as defined by the Big Five model, were more likely to use different coping strategies. The hypothesis was that individuals with the dominant trait of neuroticism would be significantly more likely than those of other traits to use avoidant coping. The current study also analyzed whether people who had COVID-19 or had known someone who had would use different coping strategies than those who didn't. For this study, an online survey was used and shared with the community. The survey consisted of an informed consent, a demographic questionnaire, the 44-item Big Five questionnaire from John and Srivastava, and the 28-item brief cope questionnaire from Carver, followed by a debrief. The participants were then divided by their dominant personality trait from the Big Five questionnaire and evaluated using 2 different factor analyses applied to information from the brief cope questionnaire. The research used a 2-factor analysis from Wang and colleagues that sorted various coping strategies from the brief cope into maladaptive coping and adaptive coping. A 3-factor analysis, also from Wang and colleagues, sorted coping strategies into socially supported coping, self-sufficient coping, and avoidant coping. The average age of the 175 participants was 33, with a range from 18 to 86. Of the participants, a majority were women and almost all of the participants were white. Of the participants, 55 had either contracted COVID-19 at some point or known someone who had. 35 participants had the dominant trait of openness to experience, 35 had conscientiousness, 22 had extroversion, 55 had agreeableness, and 28 had neuroticism. A MANOVA revealed a significant interaction between Big Five personality traits and avoidant coping from Wang and colleagues' 3-factor coping model. These results, paired with the average avoidant coping strategy scores for each dominant personality type, determined that individuals with the dominant trait of conscientiousness were significantly more likely to use avoidant coping than those of other traits. This rejects the initial hypothesis that neuroticism would produce those results. Of the two separate MANOVAs for each factor model, only avoidant coping from the three-factor model had significance. Two MANOVAs were conducted using the demographic information of having had COVID-19 or known someone who had, one with Wang and colleagues' three-factor coping model and one with their two-factor coping model. Each found significant differences. A significant interaction was identified between direct COVID-19 experience and socially supported coping from the three-factor model. Results revealed that individuals without direct COVID-19 experience were significantly more likely to use socially supported coping behaviors. Another significant interaction was revealed between direct COVID-19 experience and the coping style of adaptive coping. These results determined that individuals without direct COVID-19 experience were significantly more likely to use adaptive coping. Guccino found that social support during periods of isolation and loneliness is positively associated with psychological and emotional well-being. This suggests that socially supported coping is extremely important to short and long-term well-being regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. As individuals with direct COVID-19 experience may experience higher rates of loss and isolation than those without, they may be at a greater risk of current and extended psychological suffering due to them being less likely to use socially supported coping. With the results of this research, it may be that direct COVID-19 experience is a better predictor of coping strategies during this pandemic than personality traits. Avoidant coping consists of denial, self-blame, and substance use, as well as several other coping behaviors. Holmes and colleagues found that it is common for extended periods of isolation, such as the conditions created by this pandemic, increase thoughts and behaviors relating to self-harm and suicide. As conscientious people were significantly more likely to use avoidant coping, they may be at an increased risk for these thoughts and behaviors. One of the major limitations of this study was the lack of diversity. Almost 3/4 of the participants were women, and nearly all of them were white. Though the study was sent to the community, the 175 participants were from a convenient sample. Another potential limitation was found in the descriptive statistics in the Big Five trait relationship to the coping strategies questionnaire. For all of the coping strategies in the two-factor model and three-factor model, conscientiousness and agreeableness had the highest mean scores, though there was only one significant difference for coping strategies. Different personality traits may have a different bias of rating scales. People around the world are needing to find ways to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. Research shows that effective and positively oriented coping strategies are imperative for minimizing current and long-term psychological and emotional well-being when dealing with a pandemic. Studying the influences that affect how people choose to cope with COVID-19 may be an effective way to target and aid people who may be at greater risk for declines in mental health. To further explore solutions to ensuring stable wellness concerning a pandemic, more research needs to be done regarding the impact of direct COVID-19 experience on mental health and the relationship between coping strategies and resilience in the case of a pandemic. Further research can also be done to analyze differences in response rates between those of different dominant personality types. If you have any questions about this presentation or the research presented, please email me at hrgroover@email.meredith.com. And thank you.